Hey Taylor, I just wanted to go through and I'll give you my reflection video finally. I know it's been a little bit late, but apologize for the lateness of it, but here we go. Um, one was talking about standards, and standards is something that I haven't been really familiar with because throughout my teaching career, I've had textbooks, I've had things to teach, I've been told to teach, and everything is based on the textbook, and there has never been a really clear standard as much. So it's something that I'm not as familiar with, and I've never had to really actually unpack a standard before. Um, so that was one of the actually most challenging things for me. Doing something I've never done, obviously for the first time, makes it a little bit different. Then obviously meeting everything to those standards was altering the things that I do, the way I've done things for many years. So it wasn't necessarily hard, but it was just a new way of seeing things, with actually having a concrete goal at the end you have to meet. So thanks to this, it was a very, very interesting lesson to do in the beginning, but it also made me kind of think of and change my ways of lesson planning. The first thing of having actual standards and backwards mapping, I really like the fact of backwards mapping. I like the idea of taking a product and reverse engineering it and looking at how making things work. And the idea of backwards mapping allowed me to start from the standard and work backwards to see how I would get my students to actually achieve that standard. Um, so that was a very, very intriguing concept for me. It seems like if a student can understand how to make things work, then they can and slowly build upon that knowledge. Um, then it allows the students to clearly understand and be able to achieve their goal. Um, Next, I want to talk about some setting the objectives for the standard, making students understand the specific objectives that they have for the standard and how they're going to achieve them was something that I've done in class, but not using actually specific academic target language. So that was a little bit unfamiliar with me doing that specific, but I see how it was used in classroom, and I've tried to initiate that in some of my classes, and it seems very, very comfortable if you have an exact, very specific goal of what you're going to be doing, whatever time it is. If students understand that goal and they know what they're doing, they definitely have more of a tendency to work harder and much more effectively to stay on task and target, and they know what they're trying to achieve. So therefore, it allows them to focus and to work harder more. I definitely like that idea as well. Help my classes and helps me plan my lessons as well. Um, Understanding and applying the standards was a very, very unique for me. Once again, once I didn't have the standards, so understanding specifically what they were and applying them was definitely unique. So the first one, being all the standards, was probably the most challenging, yet the most interesting, the most unique lesson that I had to do in this one, in this unit, because this module, because yeah, once again, I had never done this before. Next was the lesson planning, which honestly, a lot of times I dread lesson planning. Not the fact that I actually do that, but I have a lot of large monotonous amount of paperwork that I have to do, and any more time that I have to spend in front of a computer doing more paperwork is not amiable, I would have to say. So, I like to try and get my lesson plan over as quick as possible. Now, I'm not talking about the actual thinking about and trying to search and for new and engaging activities in lesson planning. I'm talking actually writing the lesson plan itself. Anytime I have to sit behind a computer and actually sit and write these things down, it becomes annoying and frustrating sometimes, just because I get tired of looking at the computer screen, and I teach 5 or 6 hours a day and have 1 or 2 hours of lesson planning max, so I don't have the time and effort to actually put into that when I'm doing all my other work as well. So lesson planning often constantly takes a backseat a lot of times to the idea of the quantity of teaching versus the actual quality, which I found a detriment to myself, but hope I can remedy that in the future. But the idea of planning assessments, I love formative assessments. I also very like summative assessment. For me, formative assessment, the idea of being able to measure that in class, checking their answer questions, checking their comprehension, and using CCQs, which are concept checking questions, in the classroom to test their knowledge, give them applications, give them practice, give them things to show me and prove that they know what they're doing. That's my favorite way of doing it. So I do like the formative assessments. I understand some of the assessments are a necessary evil, and to get kids like a paper test here in Korea is often required for these units and for a test. And a lot of times I do like to do like some type of project-based learning, whether it be the idea of researching or giving a presentation or doing some type of debate if I can for assessment. But often in Korea that doesn't meet the standards of what the parents want or what our bosses want as an actual summative assessment. So I consider these more project-based learning in class with some formative assessments, unfortunately, and not the summative-based ones that I would like to use. They require a lot of times that paper-based test, like I said. So they are a necessary evil, and I can see how my kids can measure them and show, quantify. And the paper-based summative tests are definitely very useful for when I have to communicate with the parents and show them specifically on the test what they missed, and can have a better understanding of what they missed and why specifically. If I go back through the test and break down each question. So, but formative and summative assessments are very important in the classroom, and they give me a better understanding of that. The idea of the lesson planning process in general is something that I did learn a lot about, different new ways and techniques and forms using project-based learning, but I'm doing it in a more specific and applied way, which is definitely very interesting. And using the TPR method also is a very, very unique way of doing that I've heard of and I've seen sometimes, and I actually do use some form of it, but never to that much specific. It was very, very interesting to see how it was initiated and used in the classroom. And also collaborating with my current teachers that I do work with at my school, and actually having to interview them through about their lesson planning process was a very specific way about how they do things, helped me actually understand better. And hopefully we could do more collaboration of both my teachers, my co-teachers, and I extremely enjoy the process of the actual interview itself and talking about lesson plannings. And we all wish, of course, we had more time, but always it seems like time is our enemy when we are lesson planning. As far as differentiating lesson plans, I do differentiate some activities for students, but I've never really done it in a lesson planning process that much, which was definitely something that was unique. The idea of trying to plan a lesson specifically for students to meet their needs and differentiate that with them for their lesson plan is something that I've kind of thought and heard of, but I've actually never applied with before. I differentiated different activities specifically that I know how to do, but not necessarily in the lesson planning process. So that was a very, very unique way of doing it. The idea of literally taking each individual student and trying to come up with almost an idea of what meets their needs was a pretty new concept, rather than trying to teach the class as a whole when I'm doing the lesson planning process. So that was a very, very informative and a very interesting learning experience for me. When we were talking about Unit 4 with the strategies for learning, that was also specifically the high impact strategies were very, very interesting to me. I have used a lot of them, constantly do use a lot of them, but I don't know necessarily the research and effectiveness behind them. I just know what I like better, and I like what the kids seem to learn better through my past and previous experiences. So the idea of having like some type of subject specific strategies or some specific high impact strategies that were very interesting for me to see how, and specifically know why and what makes these learning work, and what makes them to learn more effectively and efficiently, hopefully to make my class more effective as well. And the last general element of usually pulling it all together and planning a unit, that is something that I'm more familiar with, the idea of planning a whole unit, but incorporating all of these strategies into it, where it comes from the standards, lesson planning, the differentiating, and its specific strategies for learning, just with those high impact strategies, and incorporating them all into unit plan was something that was more familiar with me, because the idea of planning a whole unit is much more for a class is more what I'm used to and more common to me. But then again, looking at each individual aspect of this and incorporating to my plan is something that I haven't done. So that was definitely very interesting for me. Some of the activities that I really enjoyed and learned a lot was some new ways of formative assessment, specifically talking about like exit slips specifically. I've done some verbal assessments and things like that. And the idea of scaffolding. Scaffolding for me is a concept that I've known and learned about a lot, but I have used in class, but I haven't actually specifically made an actual written down specific plan for when I'm scaffolding, in the process of using the lesson plan and designing a lesson plan for it. Like I said, designing a scaffolding for each kind of differentiated prospect of a student was definitely a very interesting and unique experience that I haven't done before. So to sit down and see, okay, the majority of my lesson could be for this, but how can I build something better for these students that have extra special needs or more time for something, was definitely a very interesting process. So yeah, I hope you like my review, my reflection. Sorry it's so late once again. I really appreciated all the time and work that you put into teaching us and helping us with our education and making me a better teacher. And I'm sure my students also appreciate it as well. Thanks for your time, and hope to see you again in the future.